What's up, gamers? This is Yuban with a Mechabellum unit technology guide for Season 5. I am going to break down what techs I use for every unit and when to use them. My tech setup philosophy has helped me achieve 2300 MMR for the last 4 seasons, as you can see here. So I'm confident that it will help you win more games too. Our approach is a balanced 50-50 mix between aggro and standard defensive play. Each unit is built with 2 to 3 flexible roles: carry, support, and 1 round wonder, to allow us to stay versatile since you rarely full tech a unit in a given game. Without further ado, let's jump into the first unit. Crawler. We run the loose formation and subterranean blitz for support. We click the loose formation tech when our opponent is heavy into Arclight or even high level Hounds for chaff clear. By spreading them out, you're making these splash damage dealing chaff clear units having a hard time. For subterranean blitz, we click this button against opponent's Mustang for main chaff clear, as well as any kind of low level HE Tarantulas. This tech can reduce the damage and can, with level 2 crawler with this tech, can even allow you to survive under the fire on the ground for an extensive amount of time. As for carry tech and slash 1 round wonder techs, we run the replicate and impact drill. These 2 techs we rarely click, but they can be the difference maker on the last round if you have the following scenarios. 1, you have a lot of crawlers in the flank or even on the front line directly in contact with your opponent's crawlers or fangs. In those cases, replicate and drilling impact drill can literally just win you the game right there. Another nice scenario to click these 2 buttons would be when you have the underground crawler spell that comes up off cooldown or freshly acquired. By having a impact drill allows you to win the crawler war against opponent's replicate or no tech crawlers. The other techs we rarely run, because we like to play both aggro and defensive, we do not run the acid explosion, as this can backfire in a aggressive gameplay, as well as it can be cleared pretty easily by the Hounds. And we find Mech Rage to be not a very impactful tech, as Underground Blitz already gives us a speed boost, and the tower temporary speed can also give us a speed boost. Fang. We run the portable shield for the support tech. We use this against opponent Sledgehammer or Arclight or as chaff clear units. If we have more than 4 to 6 packs of Fangs on the board, whether it's frontline or late arriving, this tech can give us a lot of value. The other 3 techs we run are for carry. We usually run the range, armor piercing bullet, and mechanical rage. You can argue the armor piercing bullet can be replaced by ignite. However, with the recent buff to the cost, we're now experimenting with this tech. Scenarios where you want to click go Fang carry tech would be in aggro when you are going Fang carry behind Hackers, Fortress, or even Rhinos. In those cases, you want to click the range enhancement first to allow your Fangs to start to rack up some much needed experience and level. And then later on, if you're in an aggro position, you can click the Mech Rage for faster movement speed to match up with your Rhinos per se. In some other cases, this could be the second or the last tech, armor piercing bullet, for just purely way more DPS. In a standard defensive matchup, the range enhancement can also come in pretty clutch when your opponent goes for heavy into Wasp or loose formation crawlers, and If you already have like 4 to 6 packs of Fangs in this ready to be leveled, you can just click the range and AP bullet tech without having to go into Mustangs for a counter. Hound. We run the fire extinguisher tech for support. This is usually our 1-round wonder when opponent puts down a oil in the previous round and they're threatening to light the ground on fire. This is especially useful when we are in an aggro position where the fire can kill all of our chaff units and potentially even our high-level Mustangs that are in the back. By putting 2 to 3 packs of Hounds right in front of the fire, this tech can do us wonders. And it's also phenomenal for acid and smoke effects in those rare scenarios where you need to clear these spell effects. Outside of this tech, we run a full carry tech with range, mech rage, and armor enhancement. In most scenarios, whether you're defensive or standard with Hounds, the range enhancement is a must. It allows you to stay behind the Sabertooth and just stay back more so they can survive longer, chaff clear longer, and get some much needed levels, as the Hounds need level 2 to one-shot level 1 crawlers. Levels, really important. If we are in a aggro scenario and we notice our Hounds are actually doing pretty well, the mech rage can help us just make this frontline push towards enemy tower much faster. And in the rare scenarios when opponent goes for carry Mustangs against your Hounds, if your Hounds have decent level 2 to 3, the armor enhancement can entirely shut down your opponent's Mustang line very effectively. We used to run the Incendiary Bomb as the other tech to replace the armor enhancement. However, with the newly introduced Fire Badger in the main lineup, we realized that we didn't need to even click a tech to have the ability to light the ground on fire for very cheap. And this tech is also shut down by a missile interceptor or just Mustang anti-missile tech. Void Eye. We run the suppression shots tech for support. This is arguably our favorite tech to acquire first on the Void Eye, as this tech allows us to shut down pretty much every single one of the 200 cost starter units: Tarantula, Sabertooth, Sledgehammers, and Steel Balls. By decreasing their range for 2 seconds, you're forcing these units to have to stop attacking and move forward in the process. And during their movement, they're just going to get shut down by your own Void Eyes. The other support tech that we click as usually a 1-round wonder is the EMP armor. If our opponent has some kind of frontline unit that relies heavily on tech, such as Fortress Barrier or Wraith Range, you could potentially place a few Void Eyes in the front line with this tech to disable their tech in the first 4 to 8 seconds of the round. And that might be all you need to be able to win the round. This is also a very effective tech against your opponent's mechanical division units, as right before they kill the Void Eyes, or if they're EMP'd during that time, the mechanical division will not trigger. The other 2 techs we run are for carry Void Eyes. This is rarely the case in our gameplay. However, when we do go for it, we typically will go 50% charge shot or range enhancement first. If Void Eyes are safely tucked behind our tank units in the front, maybe maybe Sledgehammers or Tarantulas with no range tech, then sometimes we can get away with just clicking the charge shot. Alternatively, we used to run the full carry tech. We took out suppression, took out EMP armor, and ran the aerial mode and energy shield instead. This allowed high-level Void Eyes, maybe at level 5, level 6, to have tons of DPS, avoid any ground-based units, and have the energy shield to double up their HP. Some of them can get up to like 20,000 HP per unit with the energy shield. It's pretty insane. Arclight can be played as both a backline long-range chaff clear unit, and it can also be turned into a carry unit once you get enough levels. We run the carry tech of range, elite marksman, and EMP shot. If our Arclights acquire good level, or if we have smart Arclight card, we can use the level to pair up with the elite marksman tech to give them even more range in any kind of standard long range fights. And the EMP shot allows us to shut down opponents' scorpions or even fortresses by outranging them in the process. As for support Arclight, we can argue that support Arclight also runs the range enhancement. If we're just looking for one tech to make the Arclight good at chaff clearing in a standard or defensive game, this is the tech that we take. If we end up having some high level Arclights, an opponent is going for Mustangs or some kind of fire play, the armor enhancement allows us to get even more HP. And with the recent buff to the Arclight HP, if we can get some kind of the card that boosts your Arclight HP as well, the armor enhancement can turn these Arclights into just absolute tanks in the front line as well. Alternatively to the armor enhancement, we used to run the charge shot tech for pure carry Arclight potential. Like I said, with Arclights staying back in the back line, oftentimes they accumulate experience very quickly. And if we end up having a bunch of level 3, level 4 Arclights, we can turn these guys into high DPS units with the click of charge shot tech. I would not recommend taking the anti-aircraft ammunition, as Arclights shoot very slowly, and if you have this tech, opponent can easily shut down your entire chaff clear ability by just getting some Wasp with the armor with a shield tech, or any kind of heavier unit like Phantom Ray or Wraith with armor can just lock up your Arclights for days. Our Marksman tech bar may be controversial. We run the aerial spec for our main support tech. We click this one tech wonder when our opponent has a Wraith or Phantom Rays in the front line, and we're looking to use this tech to prioritize target these air units and deal extra damage. This is also a phenomenal tech to just click one and then allows your marksman to prioritize target the phoenixes in your opponent's back line, allowing you to shut down their DPS. From there, we run a full carry assault marksman build. We have assault marksman, elite marksman, and range enhancement. Typically, when we play marksman, we don't use them for backline DPS unit. We like to set them up nice and close to the front line, so we have the ability to click assault mode. This is a phenomenal tech against opponents' steel balls and medium-sized units like sledgehammers and even tarantulas to some point. Once we click the assault mode, usually we want to click the range enhancement as our second tech the following round, to allow these guys to not always walk up so far forward to the front line and die quickly. After clicking the range enhancement, most likely these marksmen are going to accumulate experience very quickly, which means later on when they're level 4, level 5, the elite marksman tech allows your marksman to stay even further back, snipe out opponents' important units, and deal massive damage per rank. Alternatively, if you only play standard, or if you only use marksman for a long range battle unit, then you might want to take out the assault mode and run the double shot tech instead. This can also be a nice one one tech wonder in some scenarios, as marksmen naturally stay back behind most of your units anyway, and this allows you to take out opponents' giant units or scorpions in the process. If you don't like to run the elite marksman, if you don't ever want your marksman to carry and you just want them for the occasional anti-air and potentially EMP shot, then you can take out the elite marksman, run EMP shot on the marksman, so you have a very cheap way of applying EMP to singular units. And with their range advantage, they most likely are going to stay fairly far back safely to apply this debuff. Mustangs. They have the best missile interceptor tech in the game. Although while intercepting, your Mustangs are not able to shoot at other units on the ground or in the air. However, as they change target to missile intercept, they will retarget to the closest units in front of them. So it can also be a nice way to prevent your Mustangs from locking onto opponents' armored units. The other support tech we run is the aerial spec. This can be clicked as a one tech wonder if your opponent has Wasp or even low-level Phantom Rays kind of right on the line or near your flank, where you do not need the range enhancement to keep your Mustangs further back. However, if we're running the Carry Mustang tech, the range enhancement is a must-have for first tech. Usually Mustangs in the early game without range enhancement are just going to act as a secondary layer of chaff. However, once we click the range enhancement, these guys will stay back behind your Sabertooth, Tarantula, big units, allowing them to stay pretty safe and accumulate experience and get level ups. And once we have level 2, level 3 Mustangs, the armor piercing bullet is going to take your Mustang's chaff clear ability and just pure DPS ability to another level. This is why we decided to run the AP bullet as our fourth tech. Alternative to the AP bullet, you can also run the HE ammo, just to turn your Mustangs into pure frontline Fang and potentially even some crawler clearing monsters. I don't like this tech anymore because it actually I find it slows down our ability to clear subterranean crawlers, and also by decreasing our attack damage, you are extra vulnerable to opponent's armor tech counter. Sledgehammers. We run this unit as a pure supporting unit with armor, damage sharing, and field maintenance. We like to use the armor tech as a support or even a one-round wonder when we get high-level sledgehammers later in the game and our opponent has maybe some low-level Vulcans or mid-level Mustangs, where our armor enhancement can just lock up those units forever by neglecting all the damage. In other supporting scenarios, we like to use the field maintenance for the same reason. If opponent has low-level Mustangs, even low-level Arclights and Vulcans or Fire Badgers, the field maintenance could be a really nice alternative to the armor enhancement. Or better yet, if we combine these two techs together, these sledgehammers will just stay alive forever. For our true one-round wonder, we run the damage sharing tech. If we have a straight line of sledgehammers, maybe 4 to 6 packs of them, and opponent is solely focusing on dealing medium-sized damage, maybe opponent only has HE tarantulas or even a few Sabertooth in the process, so they don't have a lot of quick burst or continual beam damage. If you click the damage sharing along with your field maintenance techs on the same round, you can just turn these sledgehammers into one of the best tanks in the game. For the fourth tech, we run AP Bullet. which is just in case we have high-level sledgehammers that are sticking around in the later game, and we just need some DPS. We don't need them for chaff clear. Then maybe we'll click this tech, but we rarely use it. Typically just the 3 support tech. Stormcaller, one of the best long-range supporting units in the game. We run HE ammo for standard or defensive gameplay when our opponent is heavy into frontline Fangs, Sledgehammers, and Void Eyes. By allowing every missile to deal more splash damage, you actually end up doing a lot more damage to the entire pack of those small medium-sized units in the process, even though we take a 50% damage debuff. If our opponent is into giant units, titan units, or scorpions, things that are slow moving, easy to target for our Stormcallers, we like to run the anti-tank shells. For only 150 supply, we can turn these Stormcallers into very heavy hitters, especially when Stormcallers accumulate experience very easily, oftentimes gaining levels on the same round that they're dropped. If we only want our Stormcallers in a long range chaff clear scenario, sometimes we'll click the incendiary bomb to light the ground on fire if we already have oil on the ground, or if opponent has a lot of late arriving Fangs that we just are struggling to clear. This tech, combining with the range enhancement, can allow you to keep the Stormcallers all the way back and light the entire standard board on fire. We used to run the electromagnetic explosion over the anti-tank shell or over the HE ammo. However, I found that if our chaff clear is an issue, these EMP explosions will never contact with the main carry units that we're trying to disable. Therefore, I decided to set up our Stormcallers for pure chaff clear in this case. Steel Ball. We run the carry tech of range and energy absorption. We typically click the range enhancement first if we are up against opponent's melting point, even other giant units like the Fortress or even Vulcans in some cases. As long as we have lots of these units, we can overwhelm opponent's giant units. This is also a phenomenal unit against opponent's Rhino, as they can outrange them, lock on early, and start to take them down very quickly. If opponent goes for some kind of multi-melter or does a lot of tick damage, and we also have good targets to absorb their HP, we'll click the energy absorption tech as a secondary tech for the carry steel balls. As for support, we like to run mechanical division a lot with our Wraith steel ball push, as these steel balls first act as a medium-sized chaff unit in those pushes, and then they spawn 5 crawlers in after death, essentially spawning 20 crawlers per pack of steel balls. Immense value. So oftentimes opponent will have units that are good against the Wraith and good against the steel balls, but then once the crawlers come out of these, they're going to just be stuck shooting on crawlers. And armor enhancement, as always, it's phenomenal if your opponent is into some kind of fire or Mustang for DPS to clear the steel ball. Once the steel balls get level 2, level 3, the armor enhancement also just gives them so much more HP, making them very, very tanky. Other scenarios, other pros have like to run 4-5 target lock for some kind of one round wonder. Let's say opponent has these heavy units behind a line of chaff units in the front line. By clicking this tech along with the range enhancement, your steel balls will prioritize target the bigger units behind the the chaff units, allowing you to get an instant lock on and take down opponent's carry units in the first 5 to 10 seconds of the round. Fire Badger. We run the range enhancement and Scorching Fire for carry Fire Badger. Allows them to stay back, deal extra damage so they can accumulate experience and get to at least level 2, potentially level 3, making them very tanky in the process. If we are looking for just a 1 round, 2 round wonder, let's say we're in a defensive scenario, instead of running the Scorching Fire, sometimes we'll click the Napalm with range enhancement, allowing them to stay back as well and lighting the entire ground on fire. Phenomenal tech against your opponent's loose formation crawlers. As for the Scorching Charge, we use this tech for a 1 round wonder or just kind of repurposing our Fire Badgers that have not acquired any other techs. I don't like to run this tech with any of the other 3 techs, as the Fire Badgers just commit suicide after getting to below 50% health, which is not very helpful with other techs. This allows us to set the ground on fire briefly. If it's phenomenal for any kind of late arriving chaff, late arriving fangs. Alternatively, if you're looking for more carry Fire Badger shenanigans, you can even run the field maintenance over the Scorching Charge, allowing your high level Fire Badgers to become your tank in the front line while clearing chaff for you. Sabertooth, one of our favorite frontline tank and DPS unit. We run the Missile Interceptor as a support tech, often early in the game, say round 2, round 3, if our opponent goes for a Stormcaller early in the game to stop our asymmetrical aggression. Oftentimes, by clicking this one tech, we can shut down sentry missiles and reduce a lot of the Stormcaller DPS, allowing us to win the early rounds before we can transition into something else. If we are lacking damage, let's say our opponent has Rhinos coming in or other Sabertooth or even high-level Tarantulas, the double shot is the perfect carry tech to turn these Sabertooth into killing machines of medium-sized units. Alternatively, if an opponent has a lot of small units coming at you from different directions, and we have maybe like 4 to 6 Sabertooth on the board, clicking this cheap tech secondary armament can help you clear chaff a little more effectively and even take out some of the already damaged steel balls or sledgehammers in the process. The last tech we run is the field maintenance. We used to run the range enhancement over this tech in the previous season. The range enhancement allowed our Sabertooth with double shot to actually stand a chance against opponents' Fortress, Melting Point, or Vulcans, as we are able to match their range. However, I've gotten away from going for full carry Sabertooth. Instead, I would much rather give them a 1 round wonder ability to have the field maintenance tech. Let's say you get a level 5 Sabertooth on round 7. You can just click this one tech and turn this unit into the strongest tank on the board for that moment, and even a level 1 Abyss will never be able to take it down in the process. Another note on why we took down the range enhancement was that we didn't want our Sabertooth to have the same range as the Mustangs after clicking this tech. We really want these guys to be our frontline tank and never just stay in the back. That would feel like that's a waste of their high HP value. Tarantula, aka Spiders, one of the fastest ground-based chaff clear unit in the game. For this unit to come online, you need the range enhancement and the HE ammo for it to just clear any kind of chaff, even hounds, very, very quickly. One important note on the range and HE tech is that choosing which one to click first can sometimes be the difference between winning and losing. If your Tarantulas are within close range to your opponent's heavy units, such as Sabertooth or Fortress in the front, sometimes clicking the range enhancement will lead them to locking onto these heavy tank units for the beginning of the round, essentially losing you the chaff war. In those cases, sometimes clicking HE might be the better first tech choice. Alternatively, if you're within a safe distance, then the range enhancement is usually our go-to first tech, as it allows them to accumulate experience and get their much needed levels. A level 2 Tarantula is an entirely different beast than level 1. After getting these two techs, if our opponent ever runs armored Wasp or just tries to go for a Wasp distraction cheese to tie up our DPS units behind the Tarantulas, having the anti-aircraft ammunition can be a really nice one-round wonder to close out the game by surprising your opponent, by clearing their air units in the process. If opponent goes for any kind of melting point or steel ball counter against our Tarantula, we will click the spider mine tech immediately, as the extra 2 spiders that get spawned every 15 seconds, they serve as phenomenal chaff units, and they can also just clear the steel balls for you outright. Oftentimes you'll see steel balls will lock onto the Tarantulas with no support in the back, and the spider mines will just walk forward and take them out before the Tarantulas get beamed down. This is especially powerful when you have multiple packs of Tarantulas in multiple layers on the board, so you just get this wave after wave of spider mines coming into your opponent's side. Some other players like to run mechanical rage instead of the anti-aircraft ammunition. I don't like this tech as much because it's very expensive, and I find the extra speed typically will bring our Tarantulas too far forward and just run to their death. Rhino, one of the most cost-efficient tanks in the game. We run only support and one tech wonder techs on this unit. For support tech, we run the Whirlwind and the armor enhancement. We like to use the Whirlwind tech to deal with deep flank distraction as quickly as we can. Oftentimes, opponent will put down a Sledgehammer and a Crawler in your deep flank to pull all your units back while they attack your front side of your tower. By having a Rhino lined up in the middle of your opponent's Crawler pack with Whirlwind, it can take out the entire pack in one swing, and then once it makes its way to the Sledgehammers, it can also take them down very quickly. The armor enhancement allows us to be protected from any kind of fire damage, Vulcan, fire badgers, and helps us to stay alive from opponents' carry Mustangs as well. Oftentimes, this tech is best used in the Gospel Belt with lots of carry Wasp in the back. So by soaking up your opponent's Mustang shots with the armor enhancement, your backline damage dealing units can stay alive and do their thing. The other two techs we run are more or less one-round wonders. If our opponent is really heavy in the front line with lots of medium-sized units, sometimes the final blitz, aka Boom Rhino, can be all you need by placing them in the front line and just destroying everything they have. And if your opponent counters your final blitz or counters your armor enhancement with EMP, then we always have the ability to click the photon coating for 25 seconds in the beginning of the round, essentially making them even tankier and not lose their important technologies. The other tech that I would recommend running is the power armor tech. Maybe you can run it over the final blitz if you are planning on playing a full gospel build. By having this, your rhinos get more HP and they will always be able to move at full speed, allowing your army to just make a beeline towards your opponent's tower for tower debuff. Hacker, a pure supporting unit. We run the range, barrier, multi-control, and EMP interference techs. In my opinion, the range enhancement is a must if you want to go heavy into the hackers, as these squishy units require them to stay as far back as possible so they can take their time to find the correct target to hack and accumulate experience for levels. Once our hackers have a good amount of levels, or if we just have a lot of them, the barrier tech can be a really nice way to add multiple barriers on your board to protect your Mustangs, protect your chaff units, especially on rounds where a big spell is coming, maybe like an EMP or firebomb. You can use the money that you're going to deploy energy shields on the ground instead on the barrier tech to get more permanent effects. Rarely we do click the multi-control, only if our hackers already have the range enhancement and our opponent is coming at us with a lot of steel balls, preferably even steel balls with mechanical division. Then this tech can be sometimes the saving grace against these small, swarmy kind of units. Lastly, the EMP interference is phenomenal against opponents' carry assault marksmen, as once we lock onto them, you disable their HP buff, therefore making them super easy to hack. And once you acquire the unit through hacking, the opponent's marksman will reacquire their assault mode, making them a free frontline tank unit for you. Wasp, arguably the unit with the best options for technology. If I could, I would run 8 technologies on this unit alone. They're all so good. We run the range, energy shield, ground spec, and aerial spec for our Wasp. This is another scenario where this unit has 3 different roles with our tech bar. By having the energy shield, we allow them to be a pure support air chaff unit against your opponent's phoenixes or melting points or marksmen. So oftentimes you can put the Wasp in the front line in front of your Wraith, in front of your phoenixes with this tech, and you can lock up opponents' singular DPS units for a long time. The second role we play will be in the Gospel, where we click the range and ground spec, turning them, essentially tripling their DPS to ground units, allowing them to melt even big units like fortresses if you have some Wasp levels. And the third role would be in a Wasp against Wasp duel. Maybe the ground is on fire for the entire round and you don't want to go into Mustangs, but your opponent's Wasp are just annoying distractions for your own DPS units. In those cases, simply by clicking the aerial spec, or if you have to do a mirror match, maybe even with a range enhancement, allows you to win the air Wasp battle. And with these 2 techs, even the Wasp can potentially match up against your opponent's Wraith in some cases. Other techs that are so good, I would say all of them. Jump drive, you can do it if you're a aggro player who likes to create multiple problems for your opponent by jumping 1 pack of Wasp between the flanks and the front line back and forth. Elite Marksman can be used to replace the ground spec if you want to run a pure anti-air Wasp. Once you have this tech, for sure the Wasp will be the best air unit in the game against all the other air units. You are going to outrange opponent's Wraith. You're going to outrange opponent's Overlord and other Wasp, allowing you to just dominate the air. Some players like to play the Wasp in a pure supportive role by having the EMP shot. Because there are so many small units, the odds of these Wasp hitting the correct target with the EMP is very high. I've seen the War Factory Master playing EMP Wasp against other opponents' Titan units. And lastly, HE ammo along with range enhancement can be a phenomenal combo for your Wasp to go behind your own Rhinos. So the Rhinos will soak up Mustang shots, and the Wasp with range in the back can use HE to help your Rhino clear chaff in the process. A very fun and cool build. Phoenix, one of the most popular DPS unit in the early game. We run range enhancement, launcher overload for carry Phoenix tech. If we are in need of single target DPS, typically we'll have a Phoenix on round 2, round 3, which means by the later rounds, these Phoenixes can get to like level 3, level 4 even. And with range and launcher overload, we are going to be able to take down any giant and Titan units in the process. We used to run the charge shot over the launcher overload when the Titans were very prevalent in the meta. Technically, charge shot gives you more DPS for the same amount of supply. And we use that tech to try to gun down these Titan units as fast as we can. However, with the new meta of less Titan units, we decided to run the launcher overload because we care a little less about dealing, say, like 30,000 damage per shot. Because most of the times, that kind of damage just overkills the medium-sized units. Instead, by having the same attack range penalty as the charge shot, we can keep our damage and just shoot more frequently, allowing us to maybe even clear some of the small chaffs along the way before we can find the right target. As for support role, we like to use the EMP shot for our aerial singular target EMP effect. Because we like to run the assault mode on our Marksman, we needed an alternative method to apply EMP to opponents' melting point or Vulcans or War Factories. And the Phoenix's range and speed allow them to be exactly that unit for us in both defensive and aggression. As for a one round wonder, maybe not so much one round, but a one tech wonder, if we choose not to go for carry Phoenix, but we still want like 1 or 2 Phoenixes in the air, just for anti-air and some additional DPS, the jump drive tech is a phenomenal one tech wonder. We like to maybe sometimes put our Phoenix on round 2, round 3 in opponent's deep flank if they choose not to defend it. And after the Phoenix has done their job in cheesing the round, we can use this jump drive tech to either move them back, put a crawler in front, or move them back into our main army so we don't lose a deployment in the process, and we can still later on jump drive it back and forth for other cheesy plays or just for defensive scenarios. Other techs we used to run instead of the jump drive were quantum reassembly or energy shield. With the Phoenixes being really weak to Fortress anti-air barrage, especially when we get like 4 to 6 packs of Phoenixes, opponent is likely going to get anti-air barrage. Having either one of these techs allow your high-level Phoenixes to stay alive for a bit longer, or simply just respawn near another pack of Phoenix, allowing them to have 2 lives instead. Phantom Ray. We run pure support and 1 round wonder techs on our Phantom Ray. We have the armor enhancement to tie up opponents' Mustangs. Let's say we are going heavy into Wasp in the air, opponent goes heavy into Mustangs, and we oftentimes can win the game or win the round by recruiting level 2 Phantoms with the armor enhancement to shut down all of their Mustang damage. If opponent goes for Marksman or Phoenixes to counter your Phantom Ray, then Energy Shield can make these guys absorb oftentimes 2 more to 3 more shots in the process. And this might be all the time you need to buy it before you can turn the round around. Another support tech that we like to run right now is the Sticky Oil Bomb. With how easy it is to get a Fire Badger on the board, the lighting the ground on fire with the oil becomes a very attractive option with just a 100 supply tech. Lastly, our 1 round wonder tech is the Burst Mode Phantom Ray. Oftentimes, we're going to get multiple packs of high-level Phantom Rays in the later games. Oftentimes, like 2 packs of level 2 Phantoms on round 8, round 7. And by clicking the Burst Mode on those units, you can literally snipe out opponents' Wraith, Scorpions, even Fortresses on the front line within the first 2 missile salvos of the Phantom Race. And sometimes that's all you need to win the entire game, by taking out your opponent's important tanky units. The other tech that can be also really nice to run is the HE ammo. By clicking this tech, your Phantom Ray can now go toe-to-toe against opponent's Wasp. Oftentimes when you put a Phantom in the deep flank, opponent will put a pack of Wasp in front to counter your Phantom Ray. However, if you click HE ammo, your Phantom Ray are going to actually be able to clear your opponent's crawlers sooner, allowing you to retarget onto your opponent's Wasp, making your deep flank very annoying to deal with. Wraith, my personal favorite unit in the game. We run a full carry tech on our Wraith because we love running the Wraith and Steel Bow aggro combo. The first tech we usually grab is the range enhancement. This allows our Wraith to stay back a little bit by taking it from 60 to 100 meters in range. And as they can stay back, they will less likely get targeted by opponents' Marksmen and Phoenixes in the early rounds, allowing them to get levels and making them very powerful. After the range enhancement, we will typically click A-Gun or D-Gem Beam to increase our frontline firepower even more, both of which are phenomenal. If we have trouble dealing with multiple packs of units, say we have a chaff clear problem, the A-Gun is usually our go-to. If we are having trouble punching through opponents' heavy medium-sized or heavy giant units, then the D-Gem Beam can be a phenomenal tech to click for a very low price. This armor enhancement tech is there for both carry as well as a 1-round wonder. Same as all the other units that run armor enhancement. If we get a level 3 Wraith later in the game, sometimes that 1 armor enhancement can be the difference maker and just tie up your opponent's carry Fang or carry Mustangs in the process and winning you the game. In a carry setting, a Wraith without armor enhancement can easily be gunned down by opponents' Mustangs with aerial spec. So this is our insurance policy against opponent going for carry Mustangs as a counter to our Wraith. Other techs that are good to run on the Wraith would be the HE ammo over the 8 gun. If you only want your Wraith for chaff clear, then the HE ammo is a much cheaper alternative to turn your splash range from 8 meters to 15 meters, which is absolutely insane. Each shot of the Wraith is the same radius as a Scorpion shot. Or if you want to run your Wraith as a air tank that can just take damage from Mustangs forever, then you probably want to run the field maintenance and armor enhancement altogether as a one-round wonder to cheese yourself a victory in the last round. I say this is a one-round wonder because Wraith, without range, they float so far forward into the battlefield, making them very easy targets to your opponent's melting points. Scorpion, the best unit against steel balls and sledgehammers. We run range enhancement in any kind of carry scenario where we need our Scorpions to stay a little bit further back so they have more chances to shoot at our opponent's important units. If our opponent goes for some kind of giant unit as a counter, maybe like a fortress aggression pushing into our tower, we would like to click the acid attack, as we can lay the ground on with acid, allowing us to deal extra damage to our opponent's fortresses and just titan and giant units. If opponent goes for Typhoon with shield or steel balls with mechanical division, then double shot is our go-to tech, as the double shot will kill the crawlers that spawn out of the steel balls instantly. And having double shot allows you to break through the initial barrier on a Typhoon and then making a connection to the second barrier, or just directly killing an entire pack of Typhoon with a second shot. This way you don't have to wait for the 4.5 second attack interval for another shot. As for a one tech wonder, we run the field maintenance, allowing these Scorpions to be amazing frontline tanks for our board. Oftentimes we get a high level Scorpion drop later in the game and we have no other good options. Then this tech can turn your Scorpions into an unkillable beast. You can essentially lock up your opponent's abyss for the entire round without dying. Other techs that pro players like to play, or just standard players like to use, is the siege mode over maybe the double shot or over the field maintenance, turning the Scorpions into long range siege machine, which is really good against opponents' Vulcan carry in a long range standard game. Farseer, we use this unit primarily for support. We like to have this unit around for the photon emission for all the ground units near us. And having a long range by nature and a cheap 150 cost electromagnetic explosion allows us to apply EMP to both air and ground units while doing a little bit of splash damage in the process. This is just as good as putting EMP on the Phoenix, and we like to have it as an option because sometimes we'll get 2 to 3 packs of level 1 Farseers in a unit drop, and this will allow us to just have a cheap way of having EMP on the board, maybe against your opponent's melting point or mechanical division balls. As for the other two techs, I like to call this maybe like a carry anti-air tech. The aerial spec that was newly introduced to the Farseer allows the Farseer to get to, let's see, 165, 195 range against any air units if you click both range and aerial spec, allowing you to stay back and snipe out opponents' boats or Raidens in the process, while being able to apply EMP to them if needed. The other techs we used to run was the burst mode, when the reload time was only increased by 150%. This tech turns your Farseer from a pretty solid damage dealing unit to an absolute monster that can take down Sabertooth and Tarantulas, or even fortresses in 1 to 2 missile salvos. I think if you want to run this tech, you can potentially take out the EMP explosion as a substitute. Vulcan, we run both a carry tech and a 1-round wonder tech on our Vulcan. For carry, we run the Scorching Fire and range enhancement along with best partner. These 3 techs makes the Vulcan incredibly good in a long range, long drawn out standard game, as we can clear chaff super effectively, and we can even clear medium-sized units like Sledgehammers with a Scorching Fire. And once we have a critical mass of Vulcan, we can get 4 to 6 same level Marksman by clicking this 250 supply tech, by getting these single target DPS units in the back line to help with our Vulcan, making it very, very powerful. As for one tech wonder, we run the Incendiary Bomb to light more of the ground on fire. Oftentimes, if we're in a pinch against our opponent's loose formation crawlers or carry Mustangs, we might just click this tech combining with the oil on the ground to light our entire board on fire, so we don't have to deal with these light, high damage dealing units. Alternatively, you can take out the best partner and run a full war crime Vulcan with a sticky oil bomb. By combining sticky oil bomb and the fire bomb, you can light a greater area of the board on fire, and it lasts longer on the ground as well. However, it's pretty expensive. You have to keep that in mind. Or if you want to run a full carry Vulcan, some players will take out the firebomb and run Ignite or Armor Enhancement instead. Ignite makes the Vulcan able to take care of their arch nemesis, the armored Sandworms. However, I found that Ignite tech is still too slow at killing these giant and titan units. Oftentimes you can get overpowered and overrun by just a sheer number of them. That's why I don't run it. Melting Point. The only support tech on the melter is the Electromagnetic Barrage, as it doesn't do any damage, but it shoots out tons of EMP missiles that can even take down opponents' energy shields in the process. Besides that, we run a very typical carry melter tech. Range enhancement is often a must to allow these units to stay in the back line, so we can buy time to chaff clear first before they have a chance at locking onto opponents' big tanky units. If our opponent is coming at us from multiple directions, maybe we're getting flanked by Wraiths and Steel Balls, then the energy diffraction tech allows us to have a melter nearby the tower and still be able to defend at multiple directions. And this is a really good tech against medium-sized units, even to the point of a Wraith or Tarantula, as we don't need a full beam of melter to take them down quickly. By decreasing our attack power, once at full charge, the melting point can still take those units down fairly quickly. And then as a last carry tech, usually after these first two techs, if our opponent's Wraith push is really relentless at causing a risk of killing our melting point in the process, energy absorption can just be phenomenal in keeping them alive forever. Scenarios where you would not click diffraction and just go range and energy absorption would be when you are up against your opponent's Abyss or Titan units, where you are trading firepower back and forth. By once the melter lock onto these big tanky units, the healing just becomes tremendous. Essentially, your melters will never die again during that attack interval. Fortress, it used to be our favorite aggro giant unit to play. We used to run the rocket punch religiously in the front line, but now that it's been nerfed, we are going for more of a support and long range fortress build. For support, the anti-air barrage tech is our most commonly clicked tech for the fortress. If opponent relies too heavily on light air units like the Phoenix and Wasp for carrying DPS, then oftentimes 3 to 4 fortresses with anti-air barrage can clean up the entire airboard, granting these fortresses a lot of experience in the process. Once we have the experience and the number, barrier tech is a phenomenal second tech for additional shields per fortress. We can get to like 80,000 to 120,000 HP shields for these high-level fortresses, protecting your backline Mustangs or even chaff units in the process. Outside of these support techs, we run the range and launcher overload for carry tech. We run launcher overload because we want to actually decrease our fortress's range by 20 meters, allowing the Mustangs to stay behind them. And having a faster attack interval and a splash range of 5 meters will prevent your fortresses from getting locked onto chaff units for too long. They essentially become these super tanky Arclights in the process. And then range enhancement is a must if you're trying to go toe-to-toe against your opponent's melting points for some reason. We used to run double shot because we wanted our fortress to be able to go head-to-head with opponent's melting points by not losing our range enhancement. However, we've learned that was a pipe dream, as melting points with range was just way too good against fortresses. Sandworm. If you follow my channel for a long time, you know that I love playing Sandworms in standard gameplay. For our Sandworm, we run I want to say they're both support and carry, because the main purpose of the Sandworm also is like tanking and distraction. So we run Mecdiv and replicate to create more baby worms in the process. If we are in a scenario where we are looking for like a 1 round wonder, where we just drop 3 to 4 worms in 1 round, and we're sending them to high level DPS units to die, but they don't have any splash, then the Mecdiv tech becomes a phenomenal way to create all these extra chaff units that are hard to deal with for your opponent. However, if we're in a scenario where our worms are staying alive, burrowing and going down, coming up and down multiple times in the same round, then the replicate is our go-to first tech. This is especially powerful if you bunch up your sandworms in a square or in a circle together. So when they're moving together, they are all going to come up, chaff clear very quickly, and then burrow back down in the process, making this replicate tech very valuable. If our opponent is heavy into Vulcans or Mustangs, the armor tech sometimes will be our first tech to get this carry standard gameplay going, as the extra HP 50% boost and the damage blocking just makes these sandworms pretty much invincible on the same round that they're dropped. If our opponent has a lot of medium-sized units in front of their war factories fortresses or melting points for counter, then Strike is one of our go-to techs to be able to have more splash range in the process, allowing them to clear chaffs very quickly, and this synergizes with Replicate very well as well. So all 4 of these techs are just phenomenal for the Sandworm. I've tried to run the Burrow Maintenance and the Sandstorm tech for a period of time, but I just never found enough usage for the Burrow Maintenance, because if our Sandworms were struggling to clear chaff, then they pretty much never burrow underground to be able to restore their HP. And if we're able to burrow into the ground, then I would much rather have Replicate to just create more baby worms in the process. Raiden, we run this unit as a full carry tech. We run range enhancement, EMP shot, chain, and fork. In the previous season, when Titans were very prevalent in the meta, we used to run the ionization over the fork tech. However, since Titans do not see a lot of plays in the current state of the game, we have decided to run the newly buffed fork tech over the ionization. Having these two, the chain and the fork, on the same bar allows us to be flexible with which one we want to click. We typically don't want to click both of them at the same time, because then that will reduce our Raiden's range by a significant amount. We click the chain tech when opponent has Marksman or Phoenixes behind the front line by just a little bit. By clicking this tech, this allows us to have the lightning attack jumping into the backline and potentially taking out these opponent's only anti-air units in the process. We run the fork tech when the range is more of an importance in our unit composition or in the state of the board. And if our opponent has a wide spread of medium-sized units that are up for lightning, then the fork tech can be a cheaper and better option. Oftentimes the EMP shot becomes relevant when you are going full carry Raiden into your opponent's melting point or other bigger units that just threaten the Raiden quite a bit. Mostly melting point, in my opinion. If opponent goes for range melting point with energy absorption, that would make them a hard counter to Raiden. Therefore, by clicking the EMP shot, we can once again allow the Raidens to carry your board into victory. Overlord. For carry tech, we run the range, launcher overload, and mothership. As for support, we run the photon emission tech. This is typically a one tech wonder when we only need the Overlord to emit photon emission to our ground and air units. As Farseer's photon emission tech does not hit air unit, this is the only way for our highly teched Wraith in the late game to retain their techs even with our opponents going for EMP. This is a phenomenal tech on the same round that a electromagnetic blast gets dropped on the spell card. As for carry tech, we choose to go for the range, overload, and mothership because this makes our Overlord counter the alternative Overlord tech bar, which is usually with Overlord, artillery, and jump drive. By being able to outrange our opponent's boats and shoot more frequently, we can oftentimes win that mirror matchup. The mothership is a nice tech, especially if you have the mass-produced Overlord card. In those cases, you would essentially just make as many boats as possible. You never level them, you don't tech them in other technologies, and you just use them as these still very solid DPS dealing units with a splash while producing these air chaff units every 28 seconds, making it very powerful. War Factory. There are two archetypes for the War Factory. One is the production War Factory, where they run Phoenix, Steel Ball, and Sledgehammer production, and you just focus on building 3 to 4 War Factory in the back line, while having these units constantly being produced to overwhelm your opponent. The other archetype is what we're doing here, what we call the Brawler or the Carry War Factory, where we run technologies that allows the War Factories to just fight very efficiently. And that's produced by range enhancement, launcher overload, and the occasional high explosive ammo. We run this line of technology because when we are facing against opponent's production War Factory, this is one of the best counters besides the Abyss unit. By having more range and by shooting twice as fast, we're able to clear your opponent's steel ball production and sledgehammers in the process, and then eventually locking onto opponent's War Factory. We run the photon coating for the occasional cases when our War Factory is right on the line, already with maybe armor enhancement or launcher overload, and we don't want our opponent to have the EMP to shut down our very valuable tech. As for HE ammo, this used to be one of the best tech when the damage reduction was only by, I think, 30%, making the War Factory a chaff clearing machine, essentially one of the best chaff clearing unit in the game. Once you click HE, launcher, and range enhancement, you can just sit back from far away and clear every single ground chaff unit. Armor enhancement is also a phenomenal one-tech wonder to close out the game. In the old meta, we used to elite recruit a level 2 War Factory on maybe round 8, round 9, grab the armor enhancement to increase its HP by 50%, and this just becomes a unkillable force of nature for your opponent to deal with on that very last round, oftentimes closing out the game. You'll notice that we do not run the missile interceptor, and instead we're running steel ball production. The missile interceptor on the War Factory is equates to 4 missile interceptors from your building ability. And while this is a very good tech for a pretty low price, we thought that oftentimes when we run the War Factory, we don't care too much about the missiles. And if we really do care about missiles, we would much rather just grab 3 packs of Mustangs and slap on the missile interceptor tech instead. So we choose to run the steel ball production for the odd times when we want to have our War Factory producing some steel balls, especially if we have mechanical division on the steel balls already teched. Essentially, then you're creating these endless chaff units throughout the round. Abyss. We run range enhancement, dark companion, vertical sweep, wreckage recycling, swarm missiles, and disintegration. Out of all these techs, we probably have only clicked the swarm missile the most for all of our Abyss play. This tech is by far the most powerful tech for the Abyss. We always go for this tech if our opponent is heavy into Mustangs or Fangs for anti-air. Even though high-level Mustangs with anti-air tech can kill the Abyss fairly quickly, by teching this missile tech, every 15 seconds we're going to shoot out tons of missiles that just clear all the ground-based small, low HP units in an instant, making the Abyss with the swarm missile the best tech against opponents' Scorpion and Mustang composition. It may not work on the first round that you had 1 Abyss. However, once you get 2 or 3 on the board and having them survive for longer and longer each round, these missiles become very valuable. The other tech that could be very useful in the Abyss play for a 1-round wonder, or it's the last round to close out the game, is the wreckage recycling. If your opponent goes very heavy into Fortress anti-air barrage to try to shut down your Phoenixes, one single Abyss level 1 with wreckage recycling on the front line can tank all of the anti-air barrages, and then as they kill the fortresses one by one, it takes like 2 swipes to kill one level 1 fortress. The Abyss is going to heal back up to full HP. Vertical sweep can be a very nice tech if the situation calls for it, for 2 situations. Number 1 is if your opponent has a unit, maybe a vertical pack of sledgehammers right in front of the tower. In those cases, you can tech the vertical sweep, put the Abyss right in front of it, and then as the Abyss targets the sledgehammers, it's going to give you an instant tower debuff in the beginning of the battle. Oftentimes, that's more than enough to win you the entire round and possibly the game. The other instance where the vertical sweep can be nice is against high-level war factory, melting points, or fortresses, when you just want to take care of these tanky units in one swipe. You don't want to waste any time. A level 1 Abyss with vertical sweep can one-shot a melting point, and it can deal a lot of damage to a war factory, making the Abyss one of the best counters against the war factory. The other techs, Dark Companion, is honestly pretty nice if this is the only tech you want on your Abyss and you are already into teched Wraiths, then you might as well just get a free unit out of it. As for disintegration, I would say this is more of a slow tech that oftentimes doesn't do nearly as much as you think it's going to do. I would much rather just have the missiles or use that money on something else. As for range enhancement, this for me has only ever become relevant in a Abyss mirror battle, where you need to target your opponent's Abyss before they can. Otherwise, the 100-meter range on the Abyss and its tankiness is often enough to keep it surviving for a long amount of time. Mountain. We run the gun launch missile, mountain plating, saturation bombardment, extended range ammo, anti-aircraft ammunition, and the photon loop on the bar. Oftentimes, we only ever use the mountain to close out a game by clicking the mountain plating on the very last round, right on the line, to shut down our opponent's carry Mustang or even Tarantula and Wasp DPS. By blocking out 700, or if you can recruit a level 2, by blocking out 1400 damage every single instance, this essentially allows your mountain to just stay alive forever. This is especially powerful as a game closer when your opponent doesn't have anything that deals more than like 3, 4, 5,000 damage. However, if you click this tech, put it on the line, and you don't close out the game, you can definitely expect some kind of melting point counter on the next round. So just be careful. On top of the mountain plating, the other 2 techs that we often click are the saturation bombardment and the gun launch missile. Both of these allow the mountain to have so the saturation bombardment allows you to have a larger splash radius per attack, also dealing a lot more DPS per shot. And the gun launch missile essentially is a amplified rocket punch, dealing 25-meter radius on impact, helping you clear chaff pretty efficiently and also take out any medium-sized units in the process. If we ever want to go for some kind of fun meme strategy, we would go for the mountain extended range ammo to maybe have 4 mountains in the back line, just shoot at opponent's units and target opponent's tower from all the way back of the board. Anti-air aircraft ammunition is a really nice addition to this ground-based Titan, as if our opponent commits too heavily into medium-sized unit in the air as a counter for the mountain, this allows us to kind of salvage the usefulness of the mountain in the game by allowing them to shoot at the air units as well. And lastly, photon loop is usually the second tech will click on the round after we click mountain plating, as there are 2 good ways to shut down the mountain with mountain plating. One is a melting point, preferably a level 2, and number 2 would be some kind of EMP tech. So having the photon loop essentially allows us to keep the mountain plating intact throughout the round. This concludes our unit technology guide for Season 5. Make sure you like the video and comment below on which one of these techs that you agree with, disagree with, what's your favorite tech, anything you like. Thanks for watching. Until next time.